Welcome to the Brave Feminine Leadership podcast. I'm your host, Melissa Hamilton, and I get to dig into all sorts of delicious conversations with global leaders, and we get to soak up their words and wisdom on life and leadership and all sorts of fascinating things. And I am so excited today to welcome Kit Rich. Kit, in doing research for our conversation, I may be your newest fan. It is fantastic to have you here.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate you saying that.
So let me share with the audience, Kit, a little bit about yourself, and then let's get into your fascinating story. So Kit Rich is a dynamic filmmaker and a celebrated fitness trainer whose debut feature, Isabel's Garden, showcases her remarkable transition from Hollywood's fitness scene to the world of cinema. Kit wrote, directed and produced the film, earning Best Director awards at numerous festivals and winning Best Picture at several others. Kit's journey is particularly inspiring for people questioning their own path. And I've seen it written about you that your bravery to defy societal expectations, from being a sought-after fitness instructor to a first-time filmmaker in your 40s, has captivated many people. So some saw that shift as risky, but for Kit, I think you shared that it felt like it was meant to be. So as a native of Los Angeles, Kit's renowned for her work as a celebrity fitness trainer, and through her online community has empowered hundreds of thousands to embrace their bodies and achieve their wellness goals. And I know you've done that whilst also continuing to sort of focus on your passion for writing. I know you've got more projects in the works, a rom-com and a family holiday film. All of these are sounding so up my alley. But Kit, can I just ask you, as an LA native, are you okay? You guys had a pretty awful start to this year, so let me just check in first.
Thank you for asking. I am okay, but still a little sad. I'm not going to lie. I live in Santa Monica, so I'm right there. And a lot of my clients live in Pacific Palisades. A lot of my friends live in Pacific Palisades. And it's just been and family lives in Altadena. It's been a devastating time here in LA, but I've been really moved and uplifted by the community here. You know, I know LA gets a pretty bad reputation, but the people here are wonderful and everyone has banded together, and it's been very inspiring actually to be a part of this community during this time.
I'm so glad to hear you're okay. My daughter and I were in LA in September and we were in Santa Monica. So, you know, we know well the area that you're talking about, and, you know, we watched on and, you know, sending love from all of us and, you know, as so many people felt around the world, the sort of devastating
Thank you so much. I know Australia has dealt with some big fires as well. So thank you so much. And yeah, it was very scary. We could see the flames from our front yard, and that's just not something I would wish on anyone.
So, Kit, you have got an incredible story that I can't wait to get into and to share with our audience. And I think everyone's going to be really, really grateful that that you and I connected and that we've got the chance to have this conversation. Let's just go right back to the beginning and let's get into your story. So, who are you as a human being? Tell us about yourself.
I'm a woman that has been trying to get closer to who I really am my whole life. And I use my career, I think, as a tool to discover that. I've always been someone who has really wanted to dedicate my time to something that I'm very passionate about, and been very, very clear that career is important in that way because you spend the majority of your time doing it. And so it does really matter. And I use it as a way to self-discovery. I started in Los Angeles as a waitress, and I was trying to be a writer, but I was getting rejected a ton. And in my early 20s, I really took that to heart. I took those no's as a way of saying that I just wasn't good at this and it wasn't meant for me. And I just didn't have the confidence to keep going, admittedly. And then I ended up sort of stumbling into a Pilates studio where the owner of the studio thought I was an instructor. And it was so crazy to me because I was not healthy. There's nothing wrong with being a waitress. It's actually a great profession, but for me, it was not healthy because I was drinking a lot and I would wake up mid-afternoon and I just didn't have any direction. So that's my personal story with that. So when I walked into the Pilates studio, I thought, why does she think I'm an instructor? But it was just that simple question that actually, and it was so soft and such a whisper, that it made me ask the question, well, what if I could be? And that actually was the start of my entire fitness journey, where I dedicated my life to being a healthier version of myself and then helping people get healthy. But I think because it wasn't a very deliberate choice, I kind of just fell into it, and then things opened up for me. I think I was kind of always the oddball out. And I think then I was always very honest in the industry. And I think that's what really resonated with people. My entrepreneurial spirit was always there. From there, I ended up touring with clients, going around the world. I worked for a lot of big brands, helping to, represent their brand, working for them. I owned a gym at one point. I started a fitness product company, and I went on YouTube. I kind of did everything under the fitness umbrella. And that's sort of that part. But when I hit 38 years old, I had realized that I had done everything I wanted to do in fitness, but I had given up on one thing, that I really took no for an answer. And I thought back to my early 20s and what my biggest passion was. And I realized that I spent my whole career telling women and men to go after the things that they want in their lives and to use fitness as a tool for that, to create resilience. And yet, I think as I got older, that internal rub got stronger and harder because I just couldn't lie to myself. And hence, this is how Isabel's Garden started. I wrote a screenplay. It was my first time writing a screenplay. I'd never directed before. I'd never produced before. So I basically just stepped into it with this idea of I just wanted to know what it looked like when I didn't say no to myself. And so here we are.
Do you know, it made me think of, I think there's this really well-known Pippi Longstocking quote, and it goes...
That's so funny you brought her up. For the first time in like 20 years, I mentioned her name the other day. That's so weird.
Well, I just came across this quote one day, and the quote basically said something along the lines of, I've never done that before, so I should be good at it. And when you were telling that story, I just thought, how beautiful. I've never directed, I've never done these things, but why should that stop me doing it? Like, amazing.
That is so fun. I love that quote. It actually ties into it. When I was doing the festival circuit, people said, well, what were some of the challenges you had? I go, I had every challenge because I didn't know anything, but naivety won in that case, because when you don't know, you don't know what to expect. And so you kind of just keep going, and you don't know if the hurdles you're facing are normal or just yours. And I did. So yeah.
I saw this, and you can fill in and expand on this, but when I was doing my research, I saw this lovely story where I think you talked about maybe doing a course, might have been an online course with Ron Howard, and then you got the chance to meet him, and it just was beautiful. Share that with us.
Oh my gosh. That was probably the most kismet moment of this whole experience for me. I think it was actually more validation for me than anything else. When I decided to direct the film, which was crazy to do that in retrospect, everything's 2020 hindsight, I signed up for masterclass. Actually, I didn't sign up. My friend recommended I do it. She gifted me masterclass. That was what was so cool about that experience. But I decided to do Ron Howard's class, and I sat there and I was learning, except the truth is that my movie was a very small budget, single camera. And he obviously does huge budget films with multi-camera. And so when he was teaching, he was talking about all this, and I was just trying to take whatever I could from it, but it wasn't truly landing and resonating with me at that moment because I just didn't have the budget or the means like he did. But at the very end of the masterclass, he goes, well, here's the truth. At the end of the day, if you can get a wide shot and a medium and 2 singles, you have a movie. And it was actually that one nugget that saved me with filming, because we would run out of time so much. There were so many things that came up, and I had to throw out my shot list. And I just thought to myself, well, if I can get a wide, a medium, and 2 singles, I can edit that together. So that's what we'll do. And he saved me without knowing me and without me knowing him. And here's what was so cool. Years later, I'm now at Cannes Film Market. and I get to go to this party, and I walk in not knowing that he's receiving the honorary award. And I'm actually kind of shy when it comes to social situations because I'm not good with small talk. I'm really bad and I get very nervous. But I just beelined right up to him and I went, Ron Howard, can I have 5 minutes of your time? And he went, of course you can. And I told him the story. And my favorite part of the story is he goes, you want to know what's so funny about that? And I go, what? He goes, that's not even my advice. Do you know who taught me that? And I went, who? And he said, George Lucas. And what was so validating for that is what I realized is that we're all just sharing information.
Yes,
We're all just, no one is this is how we're the most valuable, is when we are giving and sharing of the information that we've learned and our time. Ron Howard gave me 5 minutes of his time. He didn't have to do that, but he did. Yeah. And that's exactly who I want to be as I evolve in my career.
And do you know the thing I love about that? You asked as well, like something in you, despite the fact that you were uncomfortable in those situations and all those sorts of things, something about that passion of what you were doing kind of propelled you across the room to ask the question. I think that's wonderful.
Oh, it was out of body. I would never have done that. I'm like, oh my God, there's Ron Howard. Yeah. And I would just spit him from across the room like a psycho. But I just right up to him. And I just am so grateful that he said yes. Mm. And that was a huge lesson for me as well.
So tell me let's focus on the movie for a minute. So Isabel's Garden, I know that's going to be available to stream for our Australian audience soon. It's already available for people in North America to stream. But just tell me a little bit about the story and maybe the inspiration for the story.
It's a hopeful family drama. And it is about a stepmom who unfortunately loses her husband. And then she's tasked with having to help raise her stepdaughter alongside his ex-wife. But it's really about the process of grieving and finding hope and chosen family. It's also, for me, about the power of women when they come together instead of competing with each other, when they choose to be there for each other, how your whole world can open up. Mm. And you see that very clearly in this movie, the difference between when they're competing and then when they decide to be there for each other. It's a really, really hopeful movie, and it's the kind of movie that I want to continue to bring into this world, ones that provide hope and healing for people.
Is there anything in that sort of competing and then working together? Is there any experiences in that from your own life that have kind of showed you the power of working together versus competing?
No question. One, I'm a stepmom, and the blended family experience is a microcosm of a much bigger theme of how often the people within in the family unit, especially in a blended family experience, can compete with each other. Yes. And in my career, I've experienced that with just, because in a lot of ways, women are taught, and I know it's changing now with the new generations, and I love that. But as I was growing up, and even well into my 20s and 30s, women are taught from a place of scarcity. Mm-hmm. There's not enough room for us, that our opportunities are limited, mm-hmm. and that there is only a window in which that's available to us, right? Whereas men are often taught the world is your oyster. Take it, grab it. And so all of that is a lie as far as what women have been taught, I believe. Mm. And that when women sort of change that narrative and realize that the things that we've been told, this scarcity mentality, is actually the complete opposite, that we actually get better as we get older. Mm. We get wiser, we're more collaborative, we're more in tune with the needs of others. These are things that actually make a great leader and provide more opportunity. And as far as the blended family experience, that when the women, and I'm very close with my stepdaughter's mother, excuse me. I'm the stepmother with my stepdaughter's mother. I'm very close with her. So I personally have the experience of knowing what it's like when women bond together for a common goal. Yeah. And how powerful that can be.
Amazing. I loved, again, when I was doing some research, and I'm just looking at my notes quickly because there was just something that really struck me. You talk about feeling like you were an oddball in the fitness industry, as an
Yeah.
example. And
Yeah.
one of the things that struck me there was talking about, you really could care less about, a ripped body. It's more about doing it to feel good. And the thing that particularly captured was you talk about change yourself and you energetically change the room. Like, just tell us about that.
From a very young age, I suffered from body dysmorphia. My entire young adult life was never feeling worthy, that I didn't deserve a seat at the table for a multitude of reasons. I didn't think that I was smart enough, good enough, certainly not pretty enough, and thin enough. And these were all limitations that I put on myself. I was very worried about being in the fitness industry and knowing that I was potentially perpetuating a theme that actually hurt me so much in my young life. And I'm still young, I know that, but I'm saying my very young adult life. And so I made it very clear to myself that I was going to be very deliberate with how I used my words, that I was using fitness not as a way to get ripped or super thin, but as a powerful tool, like I said earlier, to discover how strong you can be, your resilience, and to sort of get out of your own way. It's when you work out, it's a dopamine endorphin hit. Suddenly the things that were bothering you before don't bother you anymore. You see more clearly. And then the more you do it, the more clear you become. And I really see fitness as a metaphor for life. You work through something that's very challenging. You realize you're okay and you do it again because life is challenging. Work is challenging. Anything that you really want, desire, and go after, it takes time. You have to work at it every day, be consistent, and there will be challenges and there will be ebbs and flows to your success, just like fitness. I think that's why that's resonated so much with women, is I think that they are, the fitness industry in general just starts with the idea that something is wrong with you and it needs to be fixed. It's a big, I don't know if I'm allowed to swear.
Yes, you are.
It's a big fucking lie. It's such a fucking lie and it drives me nuts. And I've never looked at a woman and thought, God, she needs to change that. When I'm looking at a woman, I'm looking to see who she is.
Yes.
Is she loving her life? She's stepping up for her own life. And that's really how I've just navigated my career in fitness. And I think that's why it's resonated.
You've transitioned a number of times, right? So
Yeah.
I just want to be able to pull out of that the how you have done that, because, so many people in our audience, it can be a real challenge. And I think of you. So I think of you walking into the Pilates class and someone else seeing something in you that you hadn't seen yourself yet, and you taking the opportunity to kind of step into that. I then see this very deliberate, well, not really, maybe just getting back to what you always wanted to do. I love that. You couldn't ignore that. You couldn't ignore it anymore. I love that. So let's get right into that, and let's get into the kind of how you did that. Get underneath those sort of transitions, if you like, so people can maybe channel some of it for themselves.
Which part specifically? The fitness part or the writing part?
Oh, let's do both. I mean, start with the fitness one. I mean, if I think about our audience, it will be very common for you to hear the story of executive working hard, juggling all the other things that come with their life and not making any time for themselves. So that whole space is probably one. Let's do that. And then let's get into the very deliberate transition and writing passion.
I wish I could have that answer where I was extremely deliberate. It's just not true.
Yeah, wow, okay.
I didn't know exactly what I was seeking.
Mm.
I just kind of would shoot from the hip.
Mm-hmm.
And I would know that whatever it was seeking, I kind of operated from this place of, does something feel like a contraction or an expansion? And if it felt like an expansion, I kind of leaned in. I don't know how these two things coexisted, to be honest, where I truly had no self-confidence and yet I had this something in me that still just pushed forward and thought, yeah, I could do that. I'm not sure how those two things coexist other than the fact that maybe that I just knew intuitively that I'm just walking towards something and that I had to get out of my own way. As far as the every opportunity that came, other than I would say my product company, the product company actually really was formed from an idea of from experience. I had been touring with clients. I had been on the road and I had a lot of clients at home that were saying, I wish I could take you with me. And I thought, oh, this is great. Just, here's what you do. You do this. And they're like, no, 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 no. I mean, you, but with the product. And that's how my product company, Kitschko, had been born. It was an entire fitness bag that had an entire fitness system that weighed less than 2 pounds, and it came with videos. And it was as simple as that. And that was purely just from my experience. To backtrack, the idea and the wanting to try a product company was because I had just previously owned a gym and had discovered that brick and mortar wasn't for me. So four walls didn't work for me. And so now I liked the idea of this online product company because it felt more expansive, right? So it was really trial and error. As far as touring with clients, that, I'm backtracking even more, touring with clients came from simply just being good at what I did, and more specifically, showing up on time.
Oh, wow.
And I don't want to say humility, but I want to say openness. I just was willing to do the job and I showed up on time and I was good at it. And what happened was an assistant had found out about me, and it was an assistant to an A-lister, and assistants talk. So that assistant then told another assistant, told another assistant. And it was simply just me saying yes to the opportunity. I don't want to give myself too much credit there. I think it had a lot to do also just by nature of living in Los Angeles. You're around that maybe a lot more than someone who lives in a small town. So I don't want to give myself a lot of credit on that.
I'm gonna throw that credit right back at you, because plenty of other people may have had those opportunities and just not been open to stepping into them and doing them. So well done. Congratulations. Like, that's, you built that.
Thank you. Well, I can tell you a lot. There was a lot of failure in there, but trial and error. And that trial and error is really important because you realize what you like and what you don't like. Like I said, brick and mortar, I just realized it wasn't for me.
So how loud did the voice get that you couldn't ignore about writing?
That voice sounded like depression. That was actual depression. And when I mentioned earlier, contraction versus expansion, I folded into myself and I couldn't figure out what was going on. I couldn't figure out why. I was just so sad. And that opportunities that were coming, I felt nothing. And finally, I started to think like, well, what is it that I have let go of? And I found that what I had let go of was just this pure sort of expression of me, this need to have a voice and to use it. And I think there's something to be said about when I was in my early 20s, I think my ego was there more with writing. I needed the yes to feel that I was a success. At this point in my life, I didn't really need the yes. I just had this deep desire that I absolutely had to express myself authentically. And that's how this story came about.
Wow, that is amazing. I want to bring up another little thing that I saw that I just loved. So often, so many of the conversations I have with people is, what comes first, the confidence or the action? And I can see you shaking your head already, right? So we both kind of know intuitively what the answer is there, or we've had to step past fear ourselves, so we know it. But there's this beautiful story about you turning up to a photo shoot and channeling your grandmother's fierceness in her Michael Kors suit.
Oh my gosh, you're the first person to ever ask me about that.
I loved it. So tell us about that, because what was it about that helped you? Why did you do that?
My grandmother was a very, very fierce woman. She was bold, and I, as a young girl, never felt that I had what it took to be her. And I wanted to be her so badly. She was the kind of woman that got stopped on the street. People just had to talk to her. They had to know her. And I just always thought that, oh, I'll never have that. And there was something so profound for me when I did this photo shoot. And this photo shoot specifically was my director photo shoot. So it was me stepping into this role as a director writer. Now that picture, I wouldn't say exemplifies me as a director, but the photographer said, you know what, this is really amazing. We're done with the photo shoot. Let's put this on. And I went, really? And she said, yeah. When I put it on, I could feel that power that my grandmother had sort of, that she just had so naturally, except what was so cool about it is that I really felt that I wasn't her, I was me, and that I actually did have those things. I had inherited that. It just took me a while to discover it. I had to sort of dig deeper to get there. But standing there as a writer, director, and wearing that outfit was very, very profound for me. Thank you for asking that. No, I've never actually talked about that out loud. I wrote about it, but on the Instagram, but I've never spoken about it.
I just thought it was really powerful, both to have had that grandmother,
Yeah.
but for her to have that really cool suit.
Oh,
um,
she was so, her outfits were, I think for her, that was actually how she displayed her power. She showed it through, she was very artistic, so she showed it through her fashion.
Can I ask you about the word power? And I
Yeah.
ask you about it because I think power can often be something that, well, is misunderstood, but people are not comfortable kind of using it. Do you feel powerful?
I do at this moment, which is so interesting because I'm probably the least successful I've ever been in terms of financial success. Let's be real.
Yeah.
But I do feel the most powerful because I'm not. So first of all, power. Yes, power typically means that you're trying to take something from someone else, right? You're trying to get dominion over others. That's not how I define power. Power to me is a place coming from inside that feels like you know your worth and that you're willing to take risks and that you're willing to show up for your life. That to me is that's what I mean when I say power. In my work, I was actually talking about this with my mom the other day. In my work, I have no desire to have power over people. I have no desire to take more than I need. What I wish is to collaborate, to work at things that I feel are important and purposeful, and to feel proud of how I spend my time. You know, so that to me is what power is.
And how do you anchor yourself? And I mean that, life, I've read that you have routines that support you and things like that.
Mhm.
And I know life throws us all off course on those, but how do you anchor yourselves back to those?
I actually, this is kind of a roundabout way of saying this. I had a very, very complicated relationship with my late father, extremely complicated for a multitude of reasons that would be a whole other podcast. But one thing he did do was teach me about sort of the middle ground. My father was a practicing Buddhist. And so from a very young age, he would have me sit down while he chanted or meditated, and he would talk to me about these philosophies of life. And I don't know why I was so drawn to it as a young girl, but I think it's because deep down it's what I actually desired. He used to say, never be swayed by the yays or the nays, and to stay the middle course. And I think that's something that I've just always tried to practice. So typically I work out, nothing extreme. That's how I stay grounded. I meditate as much as I can. And I've just learned to talk to myself kinder. That's a big one. I used to be so mean to myself, I can't even begin to tell you. No one was harder on myself than me.
Yeah. Such an important thing, isn't it? To learn that
Yeah.
self-compassion.
Yeah, but I've lightened up. I've lightened up a lot.
You and we could talk. We could do another 3 podcasts, I think. As I said, genuinely one of your biggest fans. I'll pop into the show notes for people how to find you so they can find you on YouTube for all sorts of things. They can find you on Instagram, and they can also check out your movie. So we'll make sure that once we know where it's available in this market, that we'll include some links there as well. In the US, you can stream it on all sorts of places. I think Apple TV and Netflix and all sorts of incredible things.
Not Netflix yet, let's say yet, but it's on Apple TV and Amazon Prime.
Okay, all right, excellent. That is brilliant. Now, Kit, can I ask the question I ask everybody in our podcast is, what does brave feminine leadership mean to you?
It means being kind to yourself when you take risks. It means letting yourself fail and getting back up. It means reaching out a hand to other people to say, I can't do this alone. I need you. We're in it together. It's evolution, allowing yourself to evolve into who you're meant to be. That's what that means to me.
What an incredible conversation, Kit. #1 fan over here. Thank you so much for joining our conversation. I've just loved it.
Thank you so much. Me too. Thank you for having me.